Hi, this is Michaela with TechWise Academy, and today we're going to be making a present drop game just in time for Santa to drop our own presents. So this is a completed game, and this works by pressing the green flag. We've got Santa, we've got a timer that started at 30 seconds, and we've got our score. And then we have a house that's moving from the right to the left, and then when the player hits the spacebar on their keyboard, a present will drop. If the present hits the house, then they will get a point. But if the present hits the ground, then they will lose a point. And you'll also notice that the presents are changing colors ever so slightly every time a new one drops. And then Santa will go ahead and tell us our score. So your score is 6. The Santa, the house, and the background are all custom characters. So if I wanted to do that, I can do that one of two ways. I can either paint one here, or I can upload one if I already had a picture. Same for the background, I can either paint it or upload if I already have a picture. Another option is to remix our starter project. So if you have signed into your account, you'll see a green remix button at the top, and you'll be able to get the starter project. And all the starter project is that it has the background, the house, and the Santa, the gift, and the game over sprite. It also has a little bit of code. This code just tells the characters where they should start. So this character, which is, I'm going to start with Santa. I know it's Santa because there's a purple box around it and there's a picture of Santa in the workspace. This one tells Santa to start at -103x and 122y. All that means is that there's little boxes on the stage, and the X controls the left and right, while the Y controls the up and down. So if you ever forget, there's little pictures right below the stage. I like to remember it with Y to the sky. So a -103x is going to be the far left-hand side of the screen, while a positive Y, so +122, is going to be the top. That's why Santa starts in the top left corner. However, the house will have a positive X, so 186. It's going to start on the far right-hand side, and it has a negative Y, so -142. It will start at the bottom of the screen. And then the gift is coded that when the green flag is clicked, it hides so the player doesn't see it, and it goes to its starting spot, and then the game over sprite just hides when the green flag is clicked. So I'm going to go ahead and use the starter project. You are welcome to use whatever characters you see fit as you are the game designer. I'm going to start with my house. So right now it's just coded to go to its starting spot, and I know that my end goal is to have the house come over here. So I'm going to click and drag the house in as much of a straight line as I possibly can, and maybe a little bit like that. Okay, now Scratch actually makes this super easy. So all I need to do, you'll notice that my numbers have changed to on a -x and a -y, so bottom left corner, and I will tell it to glide to the numbers that I just put in, and Scratch automatically updated those numbers for me. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to code this to go forever. We want the house to constantly be moving from the right to the left. So it will go to the start, and then it'll glide all the way to the left. Go to the start, glide all the way to the left. Now my house looks like it's slanted down. That's because it is. So what happened is my starting project is -142, or my starting point. However, I told it to go to -152. So if 142 is like here, 152 is like here, so it's trying to slant. So I can fix that by just making this a -142. And now my house should go straight across. Perfect. It is going relatively fast for me. I want to make this a little bit more of an entry level. Maybe later on I'll go on and add another level. But for right now I want this to be just the start of the game. So it has 1 second to go from here to here. Therefore the house is going to look like it's going really, really fast. If I want to slow that down, I can change this to be anything higher than a 1, and I'm actually going to put a 2.5 in there, so in the middle between 2 and 3. And now my house should be going a lot slower. I'm comfortable with that speed, but you're welcome to put in whatever number you would like in there, or test out some different numbers and see what happens. That is great for our house. The next thing that we need to do is to make the present fall. And we're going to do that by first clicking on the present, making sure we have the present up here and the purple box over here. We're going to use an event. So events are what controls the start of your code. So this code runs when the green flag is clicked. Under events, that yellow section, we're going to use a spacebar. So when space key is pressed, something should happen. So another line of code will be triggered by the space key being pressed. And what I like to do for the fun of it, this block is really not necessary, but it's a fun little detail. We can change the color of it. So when the space key is pressed, right now nothing's going to happen because the gift is hiding. And then we're also going to create a clone of ourselves. So that just means that we're going to have a copy of the gift. The gift is going to make a copy of itself. The create a clone block lives under control. It's towards the bottom. Create a clone of myself. Now the clone is still not going to be able to be visible because the original gift is hiding. So what we need to do, we're going to control the copies or control the clones. So when I start as a clone, or when I start as a copy, the first thing we need to do is show. Because otherwise the gifts will fall and they'll be pretty much invisible. We don't want it to do that. Also, the original gift, it's very hard to see, but a little portion of it comes up right behind there. That's because it's behind Santa. So we want the gift to come up to the front layer. So that way it's in front of the sleigh. It's also going to be in front of the house as well. So we're going to tell it to go to the front layer. So that way it's a little bit visible to be seen. Next, we're also going to tell it to do something until something happens. In this case, we want the present to fall and keep falling until one of two things happen. So we're going to tell it to keep falling until it either hits the house or it hits the edge. And the only edge that the present is going to be able to hit is this bottom edge right here. It's not going to hit this one or the top edge. So under control, we have a repeat until. And it has a little diamond hole. So it should keep repeating, or in this case, keep falling until something happens. So the way that I'm going to do that is I want it to repeat what until something happens. I'm going to fill in that what first. So keep falling. So we're going to change why. A common error that I've seen is that we have a set y. You don't want a set y because the present will be stuck there. It'll be kind of frozen. You want a change y. And right now it has 10. However, if I do that, that's going to make the present go up because it's a positive. We want it to have a negative or a minus 10. And the minus is to the right of 0, so I'll just do that. You can change this if you want it to fall a little bit faster. You can do a negative 15, negative 20. It's just going to be how many boxes it takes, like how many steps it takes down at one time. So keep falling until we need to check for two things to happen. And that block will be the OR block. So keep falling until we either A, are touching the house, or B, we're touching the edge. So under sensing, we're going to grab two of these touching mouse pointers. And we're going to change them with the drop down arrow to be edge. And we're going to change them to be red house. So if we are touching the edge, so this bottom edge at the bottom of the screen, or we're touching the red house. And notice how Scratch has this white line. That's Scratch's way of trying to confirm that this is where we want to place the box. And it is. So what's going to happen now is if I press the green flag, I have a house. Oh, and it stopped midway. Oh, and there are a whole bunch of houses. This is going to be a problem eventually because it will eventually start to lag the game. And it will eventually mess with the points when we are ready to add that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop. And in order to clean up this game and prevent it from lagging, there is a block called delete clones. And we're going to pop it right there at the bottom of this script or that line of code. So now this way, when I do that, it has disappeared and deleted itself. The game will run much more smoothly and it will be cleaned up. I'll go ahead and stop that for now. The next thing that we need to do, and we're also still going to do this on the gift, we need to check if the gift is if the player should get points. And the player gets points, but if the gift is touching the house, then we should get a point. If the gift is touching the ground, then the player should lose a point. So it's going to have similar logic to this, except we're going to use a block called if, then, and then, so we'll go from there. So if touching the house, then we should get a point. So we're going to do this on the clones because the clones are the ones that are falling. So first, we're going to go to variables. We're going to make a variable, and for all sprites, it's fine. And you're going to type whatever you want, score, points. I'm going to leave it as score. And then I'm going to press OK. Now the score box came up. I don't particularly like it right there, but if you would like to leave it there, you're more than welcome to do so. I like mine to be kind of over here, just so I can see Santa a bit better. And all I did for that was I clicked and dragged. We're gonna go to events. And, oh, I'm sorry. It's actually gonna be when I start as a clone. We wanna make sure that the clones are getting the points, because otherwise the present itself, the original one, it's hiding behind Santa right now, and it's not going to fall, therefore it's never going to touch the house, nor is it going to touch the edge. So we want to make sure we're starting as a clone, and we're going to have a forever block because we want this to be checked. We want this to check forever. Always, always, always checking this. So if, then it's going to be eaten by forever. If touching the house, then something should happen. So we're going to go and grab that same block from sensing. If touching mouse pointer, I'm going to make it say red house. I'm actually going to do another thing as well, because it kind of makes the code, it's what I call a just in case code. So just in case this code does not work, and I'll test it here in a second, I'm going to test to see if the gift can touch this dark brown color of the roof. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a second. So I'll see if this works, and if it doesn't, then I'll add my just in case code. So I'll check for two things. And then we'll go to variables, and we don't want to set score. We want a change score by 1. If this says my variable, click the drop down arrow and then click score. So I'm going to check that. And it does hit it. If for some reason that it does not, it should, but just in case, I'm going to pop this out for just a second, and then I'm going to put an OR block. So it's going to check for two things, similar to this line of code up here. Under sensing, it can test to see if it's touching the color, but not purple, because that's not the color I'm looking for. That's not the color of my roof. I'm going to click that purple circle and then use my eyedropper, and you'll notice that my mouse pointer has become a circle, and then whichever, it's red right now because that's the red part of the house, and then this is the brown color of the roof. So I'm happy with that. Just in case code. It is simply just in case something happens. But I noticed that I automatically started the game with 3 points. That's an unfair advantage to the next player. So what will happen is we want to set the score to 0 right when the green flag is pressed, or right when the start of the game. We actually already have a green flag up here, so I'm going to use that same one, because this green flag will control all of everything over here, but it also controls, like, this same block will control the house, it controls all of that. If I really wanted to, I could add another green flag block, but I already have one. And so I'm going to set my score to 0. And now, when I press the green flag, score has been set to 0. Perfect. Well, the player right now is not losing points. We need to make sure that if the house, we're going to check to if the present is touching the house, we get points, but if the present is not touching the house, which if it's touching the edge, then they should lose points. And it's going to be very similar to this. So if you want to make sure this if is not inside the other if. We want 2 if blocks separated by this long orange line. If we are touching, not mouse pointer, we're going to use the drop down arrow to change that. If it's touching the edge, and the only edge it can touch is the bottom edge, then we should change my score by -1. So we're going to take away points now. Perfect. Now, when I do that, I'm going to make sure I have a point for me to take away first. And now I've missed a point. Oh, I missed a point right there. I gained a point. I have 2 points. Oh, I missed a point. I missed a point. And now I'm back to -10. We don't really want negative points, so we're going to tell the game that it should end when score is less than 0. It has to be less than 0, because if it's equal to 0, the game will start, or the game will end right as you start, because we set the score to start at 0. So we're going to check to see if the score is less than 0. I'm choosing to do this on the Santa just because I want Santa to say the score at the end. So I'm going to have Santa say our score. So when the green flag is clicked, Santa should start and check the score. And we want Santa to always check the score. So we're going to put that in a forever loop. So Santa should always be checking the score. If the score is less than 1, or I'm sorry, less than 0, so it'll be -1. If the score is less than -1, then the game should end. So what we'll do is we'll go under if score, actually, it's under, we need less than first. So if score is less than 0, we can put a 0 in here. And then Scratch actually has a score block for us. It lives under variables. We're just going to drag this and pop it into here. So if score is less than 0, we need to send a message to all the other characters. So the house should stop, the game over sprite needs to come up, and the game should end. So how we're going to do that, sprites or characters communicate with each other through messages. So under events, we're going to send a message, and it's going to be broadcast message and wait. The reason we want broadcast message and wait is because we want the other lines of code or the other scripts, we want them to continue their code as it is, because otherwise if I do broadcast message, if I just did the broadcast message, it would stop and Santa won't be able to say our score. So we're going to do a broadcast message and wait. And then after that, we're going to stop all. And that block lives under control. And it's going to go inside this, under here. You could leave this as message 1, but for other people who are looking at your game, it's a lot easier if you clarify what this is. So we're going to change it to game over. Game over. So that way it's a little bit more obvious and it's a little bit easier to debug the code if necessary. So now I could test that out. Your score is 0. And the reason that happened was because my score was -10. So I'm going to hit the green flag. And yeah, now my score is 0, so it's not less than 0. But if I, oops, I didn't actually mean to make that. Your score is -1. And then the present stopped, and then the house stopped. And Santa said our score. Now it would be a little bit more fun if we added a timer, just to make things a little bit more interesting. So I'm actually going to add the timer on Santa. It doesn't really matter. So I will add it on to Santa. So when the green flag is clicked, we want the timer to be whatever you want it to be. I'm going to start with 30 seconds. So when green flag is clicked, that means we need to make another variable, and it's going to be called timer. For all sprites is fine. I don't want timer to be right there. I'm going to move it right here. So now we're going to set the timer to be 30 seconds. So how I'll do that is I'll set, oh, that's set score. It might say score, it might say variable, that's okay. Change it to be timer, and we want it to be 30. So, or whatever you want it to start with, 15, 45, a minute, 60 seconds, doesn't matter. So go ahead and type in whatever you want there. And then we want the timer to count down. So we will use a repeat loop because we want it to take away 30. And what we'll do is we're going to add a wait 1 second first, because otherwise, if I put the next block in here, which is change score, but we're not changing score, we're actually going to change the timer, and we're going to take away 1. So if I did that, this way, let me move this around a little bit so it's easier to see. Perfect. If I had the change block on top, it'll start with 29. So it'll go 30, 29. And it won't actually wait a second. So we want it to go 30, 29. However, we set our timer to 30 and we're only telling this to repeat 10 times, which means that we would have 20 seconds still on the clock and it would just still freeze there. So we want to make sure that this number is 30. And then, or whatever you set it at. So if you set it at 45, put 45 in here. So now when I press the green flag, it will go all the way down until it gets to 0. The presents fall. Oh, but I just lost because I Let me make sure I have points before I do that. The presents are changing color. Our house is moving from the right to the left. And Santa does say our score. The player is able to gain points. Timer is going down right now. The player is also able to lose points. And then we need to have two more things happen, because right now when the timer gets to 0, it's just going to, it shouldn't, but it should end on 0. Your score is -1. Oh, unfortunate. That's okay. We also need a game over sprite to show up. And we're going to do that by clicking on the game over. We're going to do that with this one. So we're going to have an event that says when I received a message called game over, which I just thought about it right now, is only being sent when the score is equal to 0, or I'm sorry, less than 0. But if the score is never less than 0, then it's never going to end. So we're actually going to have the message being sent from 2 different spots. So that way if the timer ends, the game will also end as well. Not just when the score is at -1. So we will have it show itself. And then you could get fancy with this too. You can make it spin. You could make it jump up and down by using change Y and change -Y. Or a turn block, whatever you wanted to do with that. Right now, I'm just going to make it show up. And then I'm also going to go ahead and make it say, or make my timer, so this is my timer. This can go over here. I'm also going to broadcast the same message. So under events, I'm going to broadcast message game over and wait, because I want the other lines of code to finish. And then just in case, I'll add a stop all here. I don't think it's really necessary, but I'll add a stop all here just in case. So now I'm going to make sure that I have positive points, because before the game could only end if the score was less than 0. But if my score is never less than 0, then it won't ever end and the game over sprite won't ever show up. So now I'm testing to see if in about 14 seconds my timer should also end the game, and when the game ends, Santa should still say the score and the game over sprite should appear. I'm also looking to see where the game over sprite shows up. Perfect, your score is 10. That is exactly what I wanted to do. This game is complete. This is your completed version of the game. If you wanted to enhance this game or make it harder, you could add levels similarly to how we added the score. So maybe if score is equal to 10, go to a level 2, and maybe when the score, so you would do when score is equal to 10, then change levels and go from there. If you need help with that, let us know in the comments and we'd be happy to help you. You could add maybe a bonus house. So if you wanted to do like a greenhouse that gives you 5 points, that would be something to add. You could add background music to this, maybe like a wintry kind of mix. You could add sound effects, which would be in this section right here. So if touching the house, make it go boing or yay or a cheer or splat, whatever you wanted it to do there. Sound effects are always fun and I definitely encourage them. You could do a little animation to make Santa go up and down. You could do a whole bunch of things. Get creative with it and let us know in the comments what you decided to do with your games, how you enhanced it. Did you add levels? Did you add animations? What did you do? Also in the description below, there will be the starter project, and if you were to go to see page, so if I did that, oops, see project page, you'll also notice that there is the starter project here, and there's a more advanced version here if you're looking for ideas. Thank you for joining us today, and happy holidays from TechWise Academy.